Archetypes. Now, the archetypes are symbolic images which we unconsciously understand. This goes back to what I was talking about last time, if you remember, where I was saying if I took John back, if I took John to China right now and said, this guy's a hero, they would know exactly what I was talking about. And if we went to China from 2,000 years ago, they would know exactly what I was talking about.
I mean, how could it with his jacket?
I see it. If I took him to the Aztecs or the Mayans, he would know exactly, they would know exactly what I was talking about when I said that he was a hero. So these are the symbolic images that we unconsciously understand. These character types, those are just an example of it. If I came to you guys, actually I have come to you before, and I told you about a friend of mine, Keith, and I said, Keith is like a lake. Keith is a lake. What do I mean by that? If I said that a human being is a lake,
So chill.
he's chill, man. I don't have to tell you he's chill. I just got to tell you he's a lake, and you want to go, I get you, he's chill. Understood. If I was telling you a story, I said, the hero entered the forest. What does that represent? A forest. What do you think of when you hear a forest? Dangerous, mysterious. There's danger everywhere. The trees are talking. Yeah. So we understand that that's what a forest is. I don't have to tell you. You already know. And I can go anywhere throughout history to any culture and just say the hero, right, went through the forest and found a lake, and you'd say, wow, this person who overcomes suffering and self-sacrifices themselves came to a peaceful place among all of the danger and mystery. Got it. I don't have to tell you that. I can just tell you that the hero came to the lake inside the forest. You know exactly what I'm talking about. These are the archetypes. That's these psychic things that exist that we all share. And that goes back to, remember that slide I showed you last time with the person at the bottom and the funneling all coming down to that individual mind. This is a great book, The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious. I'll tell you, sometimes I have students who come to me and they're like, what's the best book to read from Carl Jung? Like, what's the easiest to understand? Carl Jung is really, really hard. He is very difficult. He's not writing for simplicity. He's writing to explain complex ideas. He does have some stuff that's more or less able, we're more or less able to apprehend, but his stuff is difficult. This is, I think, probably one of my favorite books from him, The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, where he kind of explains all of this. If you're struggling with it and you want to let me know, I can give you an article that explains it pretty well also. But it's just one of those things you got to kind of get your head around. It's difficult. Wait, so I can share in the memories of my ancestors? Yes. And not just my ancestors, but your ancestors too? Yes. And is there any proof for this? Well, proof is just a proper interpretation of the evidence. And is there evidence for this? Yes. I just gave you some, by the way. How else would you explain that we all have these shared memories and these shared moralities and these shared histories and these shared ideas as a culture? I guess cultural understanding, but across all cultures, across all time, across all continents. We have to be able to explain that. And just saying, it is what it is. That's not an explanation, man. That's a cop-out. It's to confront and try to figure that out. And it's worth figuring out, because if it turns out that that's true, what Jung is saying here, then there's some important stuff that's there. Maybe, it should impact how we treat people. It should impact how we behave within the world. And if it doesn't, I would suggest that you're not apprehending it then. You're missing something from it. I talked last time about the archetypes. I think it's on the last page of one of the packets that you could have picked up last time. I've got, I think, 2 charts. This one right here, I think is, I don't think I gave you this exact one, but I gave you a different one. The archetypes essentially are, you got a hero, an innocent, an explorer, sage, outlaw, magician, jester, lover, everyman, caregiver, creator, ruler. Now think about, think about a movie. What could be a movie that most of us would know?
Top Gun.
Top Gun. Which one?
Sausage Party.
I didn't see Sausage Party. I saw Sausage Party in the theater. I remember thinking like, they released this. That's interesting. Home Alone.
Home Alone.
Yeah.
Camping.
Saving Private Ryan.
Dude.
Fast and Furious.
Fast and Furious. I've never seen it. Any of them. All 10 of them, whatever. 8 of them. If any of you are familiar with Star Wars, the guy who wrote Star Wars, George Lucas, he consciously went back and based all of his characters on one of these kind of archetypes. You've got the sage, you got the outlaw. So I would encourage you to think of this. Every single movie that you watch, TV shows, you're going to have characters who are going to reflect these archetypes. You're going to have somebody in there who is like the magician or the sage or the outlaw. Oh, what was that movie from M. Night Shyamalan? Lady in the Water, I think it was called? I think it was that one. If any of you, it's kind of obscure now. But the movie actually actively points out and says, hey, this is the innocent. This is the, and there's somebody who's reading from a book trying to figure out what's going to happen in life based off of the description of the archetypes and where they're going to go. The cool thing about the archetypes, well, a few things. First off, if you ever sit down and you watch a movie, within the first 10 minutes of watching the movie, you're going to know how the movie ends. You're going to know who the villain, you're going to know who the hero is, you're going to know who the villains are, you're going to know who each of these people within here are, you're going to know what the struggles are going to be. So like, if any of you ever go watch a movie with me, that was going to be the most frustrating part. I'll sit there within the first 10 to 15 minutes and go, pause. Here's what's going to happen. and you'll be that person where people will be like, oh my god, you're going to ruin the movie. So I remember I watched Wonder Woman, the first that came out. And if any of you saw the first Wonder Woman, it's supposed to be like this big reveal at the end who the bad guy is. Because they're trying to get you to think it's one specific person. Turns out it's someone completely different. And they're like, haha, subvert your expectations. A friend of mine had seen the movie twice already. And so we're watching it, and no joke, like 15 minutes or so into it, he goes, all right, Mister, you're so damn smart. Tell me how's this going to end. I tell him exactly how it's going to end. And he's like, fuck you, man. You've already seen it. And he presses play. Now, that's good because that means that you're able to predict how things are going to happen because there's a structure around it and you learn how to do that. But it's also important because you learn about people. Remember, the reason that there are characters in movies is because those characters in movies are based off of personality types that we encounter in the real world. If there's a character in a movie who you never come across someone like that, they're not interesting. It's like you think about certain characters that, like, they're just pure evil. There's nothing redeeming about them. We don't come across very many people like that. Yeah, they're an archetype of evil, but they don't speak to your life in any way. You come across someone who's got some evil in them, and then a little bit of good, you can kind of, they're a bit more nuanced, a bit more dimensional. And so all the archetypes have that. So you've got the hero, as I was saying before. You've got the hero. And the hero is after something specific. They're after mastery. They want to master things. And that doesn't mean they want to be in charge and master everybody else. It doesn't mean they want to rule over people. They want to master something specific themselves. They want to master themselves. That's what it takes to be the hero. The hero's going to master themselves. Now, you've also got the shadow types of it. If you're too much of the hero, in other words, if instead of seeking to master yourself, you seek to master other people, well, now you're a villain. Now you're the bad guy. Batman is not trying to master anything except for himself. He keeps himself in peak form. He disciplines himself to go out every night and fight crime. He faces the shadows. He faces the darkness. He's mastered himself. The Joker wants to master everybody else. He forms these gangs of like escape mental institution convicts, and he wants to master. He wants to rule over everybody else and destroy it. He has decided that humanity is not worth saving. He has weighed and measured the world, and by his own estimation, he has found it to be wanting. He gets to make that decision for everybody else. Now, you've got the innocent, which is like the childlike person in the story. That's the person who's very innocent, sees things through this lens. They're usually very creative. They usually come up with a solution because they're not bogged down by prejudice. And what the innocent person is seeking is safety. But if you're too much of an innocent person, you become a victim. An explorer who seeks freedom, if you seek too much freedom, then you become a raider. Bad person. A sage, the person who's the thinker, they're seeking knowledge. If you become too much of a knowledge seeker, you become an elitist. You think you're better than everybody else because you're smarter than everybody else. And so on and so on and so on. The jester, that's the person who's the comic relief. And I told you before, what's the jester's job in society? Not just entertain us, not just to make us laugh, but
Pleasure.
more than that.
Joy.
Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Yeah, the jester's job is to tell the truth and make us laugh while you're doing it. Because then we'll sit there and go, that's funny because that sounds like me. if you're doing your job well. But if the jester who's seeking pleasure, that part is true. And then ultimately, by the way, what the jester is seeking ultimately, is, as we're going to see from my chart, is the connection to others. But if you're too much of a jester, you become a hater. It's really easy if you're funny, to be able to make fun of other people and attack them in a way, make everybody else laugh at them, and then completely destroy them on a psychic level. And so on and so forth. If you're the caregiver, you're the person who cares a lot about other people, providing for them. If you go too far, what you're looking for is acts of service, because you're looking for connection to others. And if you go too far in that direction, then you become a slave. The creator becomes a destroyer. The ruler becomes the tyrant. A good friend of mine, I spent a lot of time talking to him over summer. And I mean like a lot. I mean like, he didn't have health insurance, so he needed a therapist, so, why not? And so I, take him on for free, whatever. He realized after some time that this is his problem. The guy kept marrying, he'd been married, he was 28 years old. He, give as few details as possible because he does watch these videos and he knows I'm talking about him. I'm talking about you, John. Yes, I said his name. But I don't think he'd mind me saying this. He realized after a while that his problem in life was that he was trying to control things so much, but he didn't have the skill set to control things. He didn't have the maturity to control things. So he kept doing things like, you can probably figure this out. He got married twice, both times to people who had children. So, and he got divorced twice. What do you suppose he was trying to do by doing that? Unconsciously. Control what? Why specifically to people who already had children? What's that? What do you suppose his home life was like? Terrible. So what's he trying to do?
Make it better.
He's trying to make it better for somebody else. He's trying to fix his own home life by creating a home life where he thinks this is how things should be done. My home life was terrible, so therefore I'm going to get into a home life, and not even like make his own, but get into one that's already made. And then say, you know what, this home life is messed up. Dad's no longer around. I'm going to be that person. And he realized that after some time that he was trying to control things so much that he was becoming the tyrant. And that was the thing that contributed, not caused, but contributed to the destruction of those relationships. And now, the dude, he just sent me a picture. I need to respond to him, man. It was like a few days ago. He's a good dude. He's a good dude. Not an academic. Follow? But he's something more. He just graduated from Porsche. He's a Porsche tech. He now fixes Porsches. He went through auto tech school, UTI, I think it's called. And he finished #1 in his class over there, which blew him away because he barely graduated from high school. I think he got through 1.5 semesters of college, and he just realized school's not for me. But he'd been in the military, he had the GI Bill, so he went through this tech stuff because he was talking to me, what should I do? I go, what do you love doing? He said, I love working on cars. I said, go work on cars. So he's like, that's a good idea. So he signed up to go learn how to work on cars. And then he finished #1 in his class, and he got hired by Porsche, and he just sent me a picture a couple of days ago, and I really need to respond to him. He just got back to where he's working now, and he has his own little office, his placard up there. His name, Porsche Tech. And he's all proud of this thing. He should be, man. He kind of came a long way. But a lot of his life has changed once he kind of realized, I'm the ruler, and what I'm looking for is control. Not to be in charge of others, but to be able to control his own life. To control things that he wasn't ever able to control before. So, when you realize what you are, then you can figure out what you're trying to pursue. Now, by the way, once you figure out what other people are, also, you can either help them get to where they want to get to, or you can use it for negative. You can use it for evil. In other words, if you realize, okay, I've come across this person who is who's the caregiver. So I know that they want to provide acts of service. That's what they want to do. Now, how can I use that to my benefit? I can make them feel like they're providing acts of service to me. I can make them feel like they're doing a good job for more people, but in actuality, I'm just using them. You can use it for evil as well. If you're the hero, again, you're seeking mastery of yourself, but once you realize how to master yourself, now you learn how to master others as well, and you become the villain. So you can use this knowledge for good to benefit yourself and others, or you can use it for evil. You can either use it for your persona or for your shadow. And the PowerPoint I sent out, this kind of outlines, excuse me, what everyone's after. This one over here is the caregiver. I know they're hard to see because they're in yellow, but the first one up here is the caregiver. If some of you are that person. That means your positive is that your positive attribute is that you're compassionate. But the negative part is that you're self-sacrificing. Well, I'm not sure how far to go back to edit all that out.
Oh, man.
All right. So again, we have the caregiver, and their positive attributes is that they're compassionate, which is good. But they can also be self-sacrificing. And not just self-sacrificing in the sense of, like, I'm going to give my life for yours. But, for example, I have a friend who, I may have told you this story already. She had money for a bus pass. And she was going to go get the bus pass. I told you that, and then she ended up buying the bus pass by giving it to her friend who didn't have the bus pass, who didn't have a bus pass, and now she has to walk to work every day. It's miles to work every day. That made it difficult for her because it made it hard for her to get to work. But she's like that. She'll just completely self-sacrifice to the point of self-destruction. And not just because a person needs it. Like if it isn't like the person was like, I've got no legs and I need a bus pass. It was just the person was like, I don't get paid until next week, but I want to buy the bus pass this week. Oh, well, here's a bus pass I got. Now it's yours. To the point where you don't care about yourself enough. Not that you lift up others, but that you don't care about yourself. Their motivation ultimately is that they want to provide acts of service. They just like serving people. I have a good friend who's a caregiver, and it's hard because any of you guys that person who you don't like taking favors, or you don't like accepting gifts and stuff like that, and you feel weird when someone does something nice for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the problem is that if you shut down the caregiver and you're like, no thanks, I don't know. You're stopping them from being what they could be. Take their act of service. It's not about you. It's about them. It's not about you taking advantage of them. It's not about you owing them something. And by the way, there are people who try to give you things so that you owe them, but that's not who we're talking about. We're talking about a person who's an actual caregiver. Take their act of service. Let them do something nice for you. Ask them to give you the salt, whatever the hell it is. If you stop them from providing acts of service, you stop them from being what they are. And you're making it harder for them to live in the world. Well, because ultimately what they're after is to provide structure. This will oftentimes come from people who had very poor family structures growing up. We won't look at all of them. But like the ruler, what the ruler provides is leadership. But if you provide too much leadership, you're an authoritarian. You take over. You become a tyrant. And what they're ultimately after, what they're motivated by is control. And it's the same thing. They're looking for structure. So you're going to see that the archetypes are kind of broken up into these four ultimate goals that people are after. You've got the creator and the artist. What they want to do is create. And of course, the negative aspect of the creative person is that they destroy. They do destroy. Like I've talked to you before, especially you girls. If you come across a guy who's a poet, run.
Oh.
Yeah. And if you come across a guy who's a musician, run. If you come across a guy who's a poet and a musician, run really, really fast. They'll want to stay, of course, because they don't know you like I do.
I can change him.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's my new project. I can change him. You got the innocent person. By the way, interestingly enough, you have the childlike innocent, and you have the sage. That's the intellectual, and the explorer. They're all after the same thing. It's a spiritual journey. The child is on a spiritual journey, whether they realize it or not. What the child wants is happiness. What the sage wants is truth. And what the explorer wants is freedom. All of those things geared towards the same ultimate goal, which is a spiritual journey. The everyday person, the jester, and the lover, they're all looking for the same thing, a connection to others. And the lover is interesting because the lover is, their positive characteristic is that they're a follower. And their negative characteristic, of course, is that they're a follower. So the jester's thing is that they're truthful, then they can become the hater. So again, ultimately they're all after the same thing, which is a connection to others. The outlaw, rebel, the magician, the hero, they're all after the same thing, which is to leave a mark on society, to leave a mark on the world, to show that they were here. The magician is one who is fascinating. The magician is the hard one for most people to connect with, because we're thinking of the magician in the wrong way. It's not the person who like casts spells and stuff like that. The magician is a person who changes from one thing to the next, and they change things around them. That's the person who comes along and says, I can fix him, I can change him. Maybe. If you're somebody who's trying to change people and fix people, you might be that magician. Yeah.
I think it's funny that they call it a magician, because magicians they don't do magic. They use sleight of hand.
They create illusions. Absolutely.
Like mysterious.
So in this case here, we're thinking of somebody who's quite literally has those magical powers, but that's true. That's something that's smart. The reason I know it's smart is because I think the same thing. You come across people who like a magician doesn't actually do anything real in the world, they just provide the illusion that they've done something. So anyway, the word alchemy, this is this means that this is an old science which no longer exists, which is the idea that you can take elements and change them into gold. You can take lead, if you treat it properly with the right chemicals, it can become gold. It's something that humans, we studied for a couple thousand years before we finally said, well, I guess it's impossible. We stopped trying to do it. But some of the greatest scientific minds in the history of the world were focused on this thing of alchemy. The real process of alchemy is changing something common into something precious. But as you pointed out, the problem with the magician is if they're not able to transform, they become tricksters. They trick people into thinking that something has transformed or changed.